It's just like so cool to have these
Right.
stories that are like laced with so much truth that you're not even certain if it isn't just truth.
Welcome back to the Men's Adventure Fiction Podcast. Dude, we have had a debate of who's going to go first, and the mathematics here are crazy, but we're going to be talking about our very favorite authors. So once we figure this out, it is going to be a conversation that I'm very much excited to have. Do you want to do the honors, man, to start us out?
Well, we'll start off by saying we excluded all Veritas authors.
Right,
sorry,
that
guys.
Is true.
Yeah,
we excluded... We excluded that, and I think the reason is we all know it'd only be exclusively Veritas authors, and that's all I would talk about.
The best in the business.
Best in the biz, baby.
I could go first. Let's get us started off, dude. Start us off strong here with our boy, the author of Shell Scott, Richard S. Prather.
Wow.
The best in the business. The dude wrote a ton of stuff, absolutely absurd amount of stories, the least of which, I guess the most of which, I'm not sure which it is, but he wrote like 35 Shell Scott stories, and probably like 40 short stories, which is really cool. So the guy loved that character, but he also had one come out with Hard Case Crime. I guess it was posthumously, because I think he's been dead since, I think he died in 2007-ish, something like that. So he's absolutely fantastic. And I think what I like the most about him is he has a very firm grasp, like tight as can be, on intense action and intense intrigue and really good mysteries and stuff like that. But because at the end of the day, right, you read one noir-esque story, one hard-boiled, one mystery, they all can start running together, right? Because the plots are fairly similar. They all follow form. It's a murder, a kidnapping, a nuclear bomb, fill in the blank, whatever it could be. They're on the hunt for something. But where he really excels is with this witty dialogue, the hard-boiled essence. But Shell Scott is just a hilarious dude. I've read a lot of the books. I think I've read somewhere in the 20-ish range, and a handful of short stories, and they're all fantastic. I've been working my way through the other ones, but I was doing a little more research when we were going through Double in Trouble, which, if you haven't seen that episode, go check it out. We talk about one of the craziest books of all time, where Richard S. Prather and Stephen Marlowe came together, dude, and wrote a book, tit for tat, chapter for chapter. Fantastic stuff. I was reading it, and it was this like right up on Shell Scott, and they're like, usually when you have a hard-boiled guy, he's not really having a good time, but that's the difference. Shell Scott is enjoying his life. He's got a great time as long as he wakes up first. Early in the morning, dude, that guy is not the type of dude you want to hang out with, and he hates eggs. He's hilarious. So I think that's what really endears me to him and makes me love him as a character. Is he is super comprehensive, and like he can talk a good talk, fight a good fight. He's quick on the draw. He's able to put stuff together in great shape, but above all else, and something that I think is usually missing when you have these masculine archetypes, Shell is a very funny guy, and he enjoys his work. I think that's what you can get to these hard-boiled noir stuff, and you're like, bro, why are you even doing this job? You clearly hate it. Like you're into a 3/4 of a bottle by 10 a.m. every morning just for the pretty lady to walk in and ruin your life even more, dude. Like, quit the job. You're not having a good time. Shell, on the other hand, he's having the time of his life, and I love that about that dude. It's too sick.
We talked a bit about that last week of like the Magnum effect, and why can't we have more men that are just enjoying life and who are a bit happier and not letting the depression that they might be facing take over their identity and be everything we see. Because even characters that we love together, like Spencer Dutton, he's the same way, where it's like, this guy won't smile, refuse to like he smiles maybe twice in the whole show. We get a lot of that in the genre of just like, I'm the tough guy, and it's cool when it's cool, and it is cool. Man, when a Shel Scott comes around, that's what makes him stand out. That's what I really enjoyed about reading the Double in Trouble, is that, like I was saying to you when we talked about it, it's almost like Prather is like a stand-up comedian level
Dude, he's
wordsmith.
hilarious.
Like, he's funny. Like, he could do stand-up, he could hold the room's attention and just make jokes. And instead, he's like harnessed that into his writing, and you're just actually laughing out loud. And you're like, this is kind of like the best way to describe people. This is unbelievable. I'm having a great time reading this. And to your point, especially in the noir genre, not typical. You know, he went against grain, I feel like, in a lot of ways to throw that kind of humor and sensibility into it. So he's
he like took the Chandler-esque idea of funny jokes every now and then, and he just was like, let's turn that up all the way. Like, his plots still, I mean, we talked about it in the Double in Trouble, they are still hard-hitting, gruesome, disturbing, dark tales, but the guy's having a good time. Like, he's still, even in the midst of the darkness, he has the fighting heart of man that can't be stopped, and he's so funny. So, I mean, this book here, which was printed long ago, let's see here, first printing August 1995, dude, and this is, I think, the 8th or 13th book. I think it may be 13th in actual chronological order, but 8th released. So bro only released 8 books, and literally says 3,937,652 copies sold of Shel Scott books, dude. That's crazy. That's insane. Imagine being 8 books into a series and you're 3 times over 1 million, almost 4 times. Dude, fantastic. Yeah,
the guy was clearly writing something that struck a chord, you know?
Yeah, dude. People loved this guy. And Luke and I have talked about this a bunch. I think we may have talked about it on the podcast before. But it is literally unfathomable to me now. What, 55? That's 70 years ago, dude. That's so long ago. But 70 years ago, if you saw guy number 1 walking down the street and you're like, bro, did you read the last Shel Scott book? And he'd be like, no, I'm 1 behind. But dude, what a good story these are. Like, you would literally, it would be a household name, and that is just unfathomable for me to think. Now we found one guy on all of Substack who's read Shel Scott. Nobody else knows especially, I mean, if they're under the age of, I don't know, 45, it would be liberal. I mean, you could go all the way down to probably like 50 or up to 50, 60 who would never have heard of him. But dude, 40 million total copies of Shel Scott, over 40 million copies of Shel Scott sold. Wow. Unreal.
Yeah, it's a wild thing to think how fast just like the gears of culture change over, and names like that we'll talk about today stacked up together, hundreds of millions, almost a billion in sales.
Crazy.
And most of them you'd be like, you know, random person on the street, if I just go grab someone, hey, you heard of this person? They'd be like, no, what are you talking about?
They wouldn't even know they were an author, I'm sure.
Yeah.
They'd be like, is
like
that your friend or something?
Yeah. Who is that? Be like, no, yes, dude.
I've spent hours with Richard S. Prather and Shel Scott. To wrap up a little Richard S. Prather, let me read you this quote. So, super cool. He has this collection with the Mystery Writers of America, which is really cool. It used to be a deal. Like, it was like a guild thing. If you wrote any sort of mystery, and I guess if it got enough attention, I don't know the history of it, but if it got enough sales, I would assume they reached out to you like, hey, bro, join the team. So there was the Mystery Writers of America, and every year they would release a collection, and it was completely free. Like, the authors didn't get paid. It did sell, but it was only to go back into the Mystery Writers of America's whole fund thing. And the one year Richard S. Prather got to put it together, and I can't remember what it's titled, but it's something about like murders that kill with laughs or something like that. It was better, but the whole goal was that it was kind of goofy, harebrained, less serious stories that were kind of fell into the mystery noir genre. And so in the beginning, Prather wrote this fantastic essay that said, like, it's too dark in these times, and he wrote this chunk of line, and it is fantastic. And it was crazy that back in the 50s, 60s, dude, this was still true. I feel like this rings so true today, but it's crazy to think that it was true 70 years ago. But here you go. He said, "This collection has been planned to amuse you, but it has perhaps another virtue. It seems, at least to me, that we are beset these days by much designed to make us feel miserable, created by people who would send get-sick cards to convalescents and at weddings throw cooked rice. Plays that rise to peaks of dullness, paintings that look like upset stomachs, books that read like long suicide notes, such a flood of woe and weeping, of pessimism and Freudian cuckooism, that we are in imminent danger of drowning entirely in misery and tired blood. But not this time. Here is a raft, or at least a straw, in that rotting sea of tears, for this is a book intended to make you feel good, jolly, even healthy. I hope it does." Fantastic, dude. And
yeah, that could have been written today, you know?
it should be written today. But any Shel Scott book you pick up will make you feel that way. I love that this will be a raft, or at least a straw. Dude, you gotta have something that fights against the pessimism.
Yeah. Dude, that is his wit and style too, right there. A little taste of it, of like,
Yeah, dude.
he just says funny things that stick with you, and that spirit of what his intention was to make you feel good. I think that's why we resonate so much. We both have kind of turned a cheek away from over nihilistic storytelling, and I get that the real world is a little bit closer to a Cormac story than it is like a Louis L'Amour, but I'm not here for the real world in my books. I'm just not.
Right.
I like what he's bringing to the table there, of like, we've got enough dukes and duke pants everywhere out there, just being poopy pants, being sour butts, and instead let's put some smiles on faces. So I love that.
Yeah,
that's great stuff.
Fantastic. Thanks. I picked out that author myself as my third favorite.
You did that yourself? That's good stuff.
Yeah, fantastic, dude. We'll talk more about him later, but let's hear who's number 3 for you, dude. Who's the third best author of all time?
According to me, the third best author is Wilbur Smith. So I got a few Wilbies here, just because I wanted to have something on hand. Dude, these covers a little bit better. I don't have any of the cool like Louis L'Amour paperback versions of Wilbur yet. I'll get them one day. But these new ones, dude, they gotta stop that. I don't like modern covers, dude. This is too minimalistic for me.
Dude, what is going on?
The text takes up all of it. They're not horrible, like they're not bad.
Right.
But those are like, up here.
They are bad comparatively with what they once were.
Yeah, like if you look up the real like paperbacks from the 70s and stuff, they're so sick because they're Louis L'Amour's, but set in Africa and stuff like that.
Right, dude.
And so you read Eye of the Tiger, which is one of Wilbur Smith's like adventure stories. It's not related to the Courtneys, right? He's not a Courtney.
No, he's not. Unless it was like super hard shoehorned in, and only like super fans know it.
But what I like about him is that he's like almost as deeply a historian as he is a narrative author, because reading these books, and I think a lot of men like this in their fiction, it's like reading history, and you're getting a lot of context to what it was like in Africa in this time period. They're so rich with like detail, and the worlds are so richly drawn that I don't know, it makes you like feel like you're getting smarter reading it. And I feel I'm not going to sit there and go read biographies or like history books of the time. I'm not really into like reading nonfiction history books all too often.
Right.
But these are like, anytime I have that itch to scratch, this dude's the best historical writer, I think. And the time periods he writes about and the characters he writes about, it's sort of, I don't know, like a cousin to Louis L'Amour. It's like, because he's writing about Africa, so it's not America at all. And Louis L'Amour is like one of the most American authors. So it's cool to see like this different version of the fighting heart of man that isn't in my direct like lineage, but it's so cool to see like a far off land in a far off world with these same principles, these same morals, these same things driving the people. It says something more, like, to me at least, as an American reader, like it says something about the overarching humanity of men, and like what we inborn for us as Christians, like what God has instilled in us and what our purpose is. It's so cool. Even just on like a base level of, hey, we're in Africa and these are cool adventures and the characters are all hunters and badasses and soldiers. It's so cool. Like, for example, one I would kind of suggest to start with is The Dark of the Sun, because it's about like these mercenaries who go and do like a heist on a diamond cache over in Africa during like a war-torn civil war
Too sick,
situation in the Congo. It's like those kind of plots are so sick and pulpy and incredible. But he writes, to the earlier point, with such deep, rich history that he's not phoning it in. Like me, guys, you're not going to get any history from Fire in the Tall Grass. I don't know. I'm making stuff up. I usually, if I can, will just make a fake place. You know what I mean? And if it's based on a real place, it's not very, accurate. This is where you're going to get like truly accurate everything that he has put in there. It's like, oh, that checks out. Like you look it up and you're like, that can't be. Oh, it is. That's really cool. So
yeah, that's so crazy.
For authors who really care, or like readers who care about that kind of stuff and who like deep, rich historical fiction, he's got that covered. And I'm just always a big fan of his prose too. And he infuses enough romance that it made him like this huge phenomenon, that kind of what Taylor Sheridan did with Yellowstone. Women want to read him just as much as men want to read him. I think there's enough here for anybody. So that's my pitch on Wilbur Smith. What was your take on Eye of the Tiger for the people?
Dude.
That being your first.
You've been on me for a long time to read the old Wilby. I think you sent. I was like, where am I going to find Wilbur Smith? And like before I'd even finished sending the text, you'd sent me the YouTube audiobook for Ask a Guy, I think it was. I was like, all right, I guess I got to read it. Still haven't though, but I'll.
This is one of the best ones for sure. It's so sick.
I'll jump on that one and Dark of the Sun. Maybe we'll circle back in a couple months and do it more
do a little
in-depth Wilbur Smith. But yeah, you said you were like, Eye of the Tiger will be your favorite book of all time, and you were just joking, but it is truly a fantastic book. If I'd read more of him, maybe he would be on this top 3 list for me. I'm not sure you can dethrone the guys who are there now, but he's fantastic, dude. The Eye of the Tiger is just so cool. And what's really interesting about his writing, I think, is you read it and you have a hard time kind of deciphering when it's set, what time, like what year, where it is set, especially that one. I was like, man, this seems like it's really modern. When was this written? But it also is like written like it was written in the 50s, because I was having this like mental break where it's like, this is written just like a Chester Drum book or a Shel Scott book, where it's focusing on the characters and developing the characters the way that they used to do in hard-boiled storytelling. But he talks about an FN assault rifle, which has to be the FAL, and I know the FAL wasn't made until probably like the early 60s. So my time's off there. And then he's talking about flying and going places so easily. I'm like, man, when was this? This could be written in 1955 or it could be written in 2025. Like I was having such a hard time figuring it out. It was written in the 70s. So I think that that's what's really cool about him, is he writes these characters that are so timeless. I haven't read any. You said it's the Courtneys, right? Who have the long historical.
I don't know how many books, but it is like a ton of books in the Courtney series.
Yeah.
The original trilogy is the only one I like set out to actually finish. This one randomly is also Courtney's, but I've never like kept up with trying to read the Courtney series.
That's crazy. That is crazy stuff. So all of that, just fantastic. And what's cool is when you're reading something and it has action, but then even in the scenes that aren't action packed, you're like fully honed in because the character is so interesting. The things that are happening are so interesting. Even if it's the most like boring, bland scene, when it's still able to grip you as you're reading through, that's when you know that you found something special. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I read a lot of books. Listen to stuff all the time for work, and there's so many times where it's just kind of like, okay, this is just filler, but I know I've stumbled upon something fantastic when like I get home from a long day of work and I'm like, man, I'm actually looking forward to going back to work tomorrow so I can pick up where I left off with this story. Like I don't know, I'm missing it, you know. There's other times where like I'll get pulled out of a story because it's just droning on a little bit, dragging on, and that happens more frequently than not. But then you get something like Eye of the Tiger. It's like, dude, I love my kids and my wife, but I got to get back to work tomorrow. I got to figure out what's going on with this story.
Dude, Wilbur Smith, similar to like Hemingway, can make those scenes of dudes just sitting around talking or like cleaning their guns or something
Yeah.
elevated to such a higher level because he's revealing stuff about the characters and showing their like
Yeah, dude.
their dynamics together in ways that you're like, oh, that's interesting. Now I want it. He slightly compels you by like putting ever so slight confrontation between people or like
Right.
philosophies kind of bumping heads in conversation. You're like, oh, that's going to become a bigger thing, and it's really cool how he weaves that in. And then for people who like Clive Cussler, I think Eye of the Tiger to me feels like
dude.
Wilbur Smith doing Clive Cussler. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like his Dirk Pitt story.
It was fantastic.
Cool.
It's so good. It's exactly what I haven't read many of the Dirk Pitt books. I've read a lot of the Isaac Bell, Clive Cussler stuff. It's harder to find the audiobooks for Dirk Pitt for me, so I haven't dove into them. But this was exactly like I was reading this. I was like, bro, is this Dirk Pitt? Is this what Dirk Pitt is? Because it was so sick. But yeah, fantastic story. I can't thank you enough for turning me on to it. And maybe, dude, maybe we'll do another top 3 authors if stuff shakes up in a couple years, dude. And maybe he'll be up there because he's a great author.
How about for you though? Who is crowned number 2 on
number 2, dude? This one's tough, and you guys aren't gonna believe me when I say this, but I gotta go with the main man, Louis L'Amour, at the 2 spot, dude.
The champ, dude.
Yeah.
Well, not so champ here, but the champ in my heart.
Well, I mean, he's truly fantastic, and I think that the reason he's not number 1 is because I just found another author who's has a. Well, I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah,
but
we'll get into it.
We'll get into it, and I'll explain why. But yeah, I mean, from a very young age, Louis L'Amour was kind of the first step up from probably it went like Hardy Boys, and then Louis L'Amour was probably right after. Like I read a lot of stuff as a kid, and I was homeschooled, so there was a lot of different books that my mom would give me, and they were always pretty cool. But when I found Louis L'Amour, it was like, oh, this is what reading's all about, Right. And what's cool is Louis has kind of been there through every stage of my life where I really liked something, and maybe even ushered some of those liking things in. I remember growing up, dude, as a kid, we watched Rio Bravo at a very formative young age for me, and it was at around that same time, maybe a little before. We would always watch TV Land growing up, and I loved Bonanza, dude. I think I've talked about it before on the podcast. I loved Little Joe, and I was so pissed because he's left-handed and I'm right-handed, and I'd be like, dude, I can't be Little Joe. This ain't right. So I always loved Westerns, and then, dude, to find a whole entire rich, deep world of Westerns just at the palm of your hand, and that's the thing about Louis L'Amour. You can be like, oh my gosh, that one was so good. It sucks that I read all the Louis L'Amour books, and it's like when. Then your uncle or someone's like, here's 150 more. You're like,
right.
What, dude? No way. So I remember right kind of when I first found him, I was super into cowboys. Like I said, I love Bonanza. Every single day I would pull on a pair of jeans, wear my 6-shooter, wear a flannel shirt. It's probably like 10, 11, something like that, 9, something like that. Just would go out there wearing boots everywhere. It'd be like 90 degrees out. I'm wearing my flannel. Everybody's like, dude, what's this guy doing over here? And that kind of was fostered and formed, and I loved it. And then as I got into Uncharted, James Bond stuff, more of like out of the West and into kind of modern times, I stumbled upon this collection called May There Be a Road. And I was reading through it, and the first one is, I think it is May There Be a Road, and it's kind of like a high-ish adventure in the Himalayas, dude, of a guy going to find his betrothed wife, but the communists have killed the whole city and are waiting to get him, and they have to fight their way out. And it was pretty cool, but it was not at all what I was expecting. So I don't know what this is. And I kept reading, and there was more stuff that was kind of peppered in there that was not his normal Western fare. I was like, dude, what am I reading right now? And then I got to one of his has a really cool recurring detective character. Can't remember his name, but he was a professional boxer, I think, and then he became a private detective. And his story was so cool. I was like, all right, now we're cooking. I didn't know Louis L'Amour wrote noir crime guys. Like, this is sick. And the last one in that collection was Wings Over Brazil, and it was actually one of the ones I was
Ooh,
least
baby.
interested in because it was like a tramp freighter finds something to fight for in Brazil. I was like, what the? That sounds lame.
No,
Like,
get that out of
tramp.
here.
That can't be cool. And dude, that I've read it before on the podcast. The opening to Wings Over Brazil has got to be one of the sickest ones ever. It's like Ponga Jim shoved his salt hardened hands into the flawless white dinner jacket, and I was like, "Wait a minute, what? This is not a tramp freighter, dude. This is like James Bond Jr." And then as I read it more, I was like, "Wait a minute, this isn't James Bond Jr. This is James Bond Senior and Indiana Jones Senior." This guy had
Yeah,
two
dude.
sons. They were James Bond and Indiana Jones.
So
And
sick.
yeah, too cool. And I literally read that one, and that's the one where I've talked about this before. Louis literally is in the theater with Beau L'Amour, and he leans over to him and is like, I wrote this scene, and I wrote this scene. And Beau's like, what? But it was the scene where he goes into the snake pit, is in a Ponga Jim story, and the scene where he goes and fights the dude on the plane, has the boxing match under the plane, and Raiders are both in Ponga Jim stories. And so I remember finding that, and I was like, damn, dude, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I didn't know that this was a thing. And he's got the shoulder holster and the big 45 in there. And it was just like unreal. So it really like fostered, I think it was, because up until that point, I mean, you look up, we've talked about it before, you're literally scouring the internet after you watch Indiana Jones, after you play Uncharted. You're like, books,
Yeah.
movies, TV shows like Indiana Jones, like Uncharted, nothing, dude. And nobody even would mention Ponga Jim. And then I found him and I was like,
It's crazy.
dude, this is it. This is
Yeah,
what it's all
so
about.
much so that you brought it up. Louis, I think Beau L'Amour brought it up on the podcast. Like Louis
Dude.
literally was like, "I wrote this. What's going on here?" Yeah, when you read it, you can see the inspiration was there. And that's one thing about Louis is that people often remember the westerns very,
Right.
understandably so because he had a gazillion and a half of them. But things like Diamond of the Giroux, is that what that was called?
Yeah.
And
Diamond Drew, yeah, fantastic.
yeah, that one. Insanely good high adventure story.
Yeah,
The
dude.
audiobook is bonkers good. And
Yeah.
of course, Ponga Jim. You said there's another guy. I haven't
Yeah,
read him
I
yet.
think there's actually two other guys. There's Turk Madden and some other guy, but both of those are kind of like Ponga Jim archetypes, but instead of being ship freighters, they're pilots. So they're,
Yeah,
if
perfect,
any
dude. I gotta
fans
check those out.
of Noah Redford and Mitch Mayhew would love those. Yeah,
And
Turk
then you
Madden.
got Joe Mack, dude. I think one of his best books of all time is Last of the Breed.
Oh yeah, dude.
It's
I still have not read Last of the Breed. I know
you
it's
should
a
check it
crime
out this
against
winter
humanity.
because this is the time. Is like it's in
I've got
Siberia.
it
There's
sitting
snow.
somewhere around here.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, here it is
I
right
think
here.
mine's
Look at that.
deep in the pile over there. So, oh, that's cool. You have like an older, like
Yeah,
80s
dude.
sick. That's super sick. Mine's one of the
This is a big one, dude. That's what's
these
nuts
kind of
about
boys.
Louis too, is he had massive range. Sorry, you were saying Last of the Breed, Joe Mack.
Well, it's just you got to read it during winter because it's in Siberia. It's kind of like First Blood or Savage Son, or a survival story out in the wilderness, and to the point of Wilbur Smith, how I was talking about, historical writing and feeling like you're getting smarter. You read that book or any Louis L'Amour, and you can dilute yourself into thinking, dude, I could survive in the West now. I know exactly how to get food and water in the West because he's so good with it. I mean,
He's a
and
genius.
to his son's point, when we talked to Beau, he was like, he gave just enough detail to make you feel like that, but it's like he didn't really give as much as people remember or think he did, which is super sick. It was almost like hypnosis. He was like, let me give you the pieces, you'll connect the rest, and you'll think that you got it. But great choice, dude. Great number 2.
Love Louis. And like we said, his Western's fantastic. His high adventure, in my opinion, because I like high adventure a little more than I like the Western, it's the best stuff you can read. The Ponga Jim series, the short stories of Louis L'Amour, Volume 4, out of this world. Gotta check it out. And Riley's Luck. Riley's Luck is like a nice cross between high adventure and Western, but fantastic. Next to you, dude. Who's the number 2 spot for you?
I cheated, and I brought 2 people here, but I did that for a reason. I did it on purpose.
You dastardly dog.
I think I'll make it work. But I chose Frank Bill and Brian Panowich for my my number 2. But dude, first off, we always crap on modern covers. This cover though So sick. I
Fantastic.
love that cover, dude. I love that
That's
cover.
crazy.
Um, but yeah, I picked these two together because, like, where do I even start? I think it's because this is a favorite author list, right? This is not I'm saying these are the best authors of all time or anything like. These are my favorite authors, and these two guys had like the biggest impact I think on me as a writer in this modern era. Like these are my contemporaries. I've spoken to both these men and stuff. Like they have such a special place in my heart in my writing career and journey. Um, that that's why I think I mentioned them. And let's start with like Brian Panowich. This was, and I talked about it on my favorite books episode, or our favorite book episode during my portion. This was like the book that kind of bridged me away from literary fiction into adventure fiction. When I read this, it was written so well, like all of the literary books I had read to that point, and I was like, this is as good as Faulkner or Hemingway. Like this is written impeccably, but it's crime and it's adventure and it's action, and there's like brothers against brothers Shakespearean, but it's like biker gangs and fist fights and shotguns, and I was like, this is amazing. What are we doing here? This is incredible. So it really, the action was so good and it was so thrilling, and I was ripping through the pages that it was to a level that I was like, I don't ever want to go back to just reading a boring book again. I just can't do it. I don't want to read. I want to read genre fiction, I guess, because I want this. Because this is such a I don't know. These are so few and far between. The kind of thrillers that are as well written as like a literary story, and that's I think the sweet spot for me. So this, for that reason, is why I bring it up. And to the point of Frank Bill is like the only other guy I've ever seen do that. Like he writes so poetically, and he's like a cooler Cormac McCarthy to me. I think he does what Cormac's trying to do, but I like how he does it better. This is a pristine version that I'm not going to read of Back to the Dirt, because this is my favorite Father's Day book of all time, dude. He wrote this based off of a lot of the exploits of his father in Vietnam, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to my number one pick. But Frank Bill is like a true man's man. Like he's an actual guy who like works in the factories. Like he's a guy, and he knows what that means, and he knows how to write about it in a way that not many do. Because I think we can all kind of sniff out the difference between somebody who has lived the struggle or someone who's pretending that they've had struggle.
Right.
And so I really love that when I read Frank Bill's books, it's almost like if a poet inherited the body of my dad. And it's like, okay, now he's speaking able to like impart wisdom. This is crazy. Like, this is cool. So I don't know. These two are like two sides of the same coin for me. I'm not going to pretend to know what either man believes, but I think that they are, if you met them, they're philosophically very different. I think they have different mindsets, but you see they are two sides of the same coin, and I love reading both of these authors more than most contemporary authors these days. I think they're crushing the literary thriller. I just can't say enough about it.
Yeah, dude, that's so cool. It's cool to have like you said, and it's been a talking point actually a lot in the Discord and kind of just in general, is like, when does literary fiction become genre fiction, become men's adventure fiction, become pulp? And it's interesting, and there's definitely an episode in store diving into that discussion. But to have two guys, and the fact that you know them too, is just so sick, dude.
Right? How do you not throw them on the list?
But to have these guys who are like able to blend stuff, and maybe that's what it is there's more of a thought of like, I don't want this just to be solely entertaining. I want it to have some substance behind it, because I think that maybe that is the shift. Maybe it's not. I don't know. We'll discuss that more. Tune in sooner or later to find out. But it's so cool to have them work really hard to give you these things that impact your life and make you think and challenge you in different ways. But also then you're like, all right, while my mind's processing that, let me get through this sick fist fight or sick shootout. You know, like it's so cool. It kind of is like I'm sure that they do it in a way where it's give and take and allows you to work through it. So that's so awesome. I've not checked out either of these guys. They just haven't been on my radar, other than you telling me all the time to read them. So
right.
But yeah, I'll have to check them out. That's really cool.
So is this your number one now?
Dude, this is number one.
Oh, dude, we're here in the big leagues. What do we do?
Then it's gonna be Stephen Marlowe, also known as Milton Lesser, dude. His book covers always feature beautiful women. I don't know what this lady's doing. She's like got a shoe pointed up at the sky.
Interesting. I thought that was a knife. I thought she was hitting a little Michael Myers on us.
No, dude, it's literally. I think it's her shoe.
Wow.
But he writes. This is a spoiler alert for if we ever do our top 10 favorite men's adventure fiction characters. He writes my all-time favorite fictional character, Chester Drum, dude. And let me paint the stage, dude. Let me set the vibes up. Here I am, a young man on the cusp of graduating college.
Graduate college. I should have just let you finish your sentence.
22, cool. I guess. 23, somewhere around there. And what year would it be other than the very start of 2020, dude? The dark times, the times of doom and depression.
Special year, dude.
I have a Snapchat saved on my phone on March 13th, and it says they just canceled school for the whole semester. I have 2 classes that are mandatory in-person classes because they're in-studio classes. Am I going to graduate? I did graduate, spoiler alert. Somehow they moved them to online. I don't know how they did it. And so I'm sitting there, dude. And luckily, I just started smoking cigars in 2019, my birthday in 2019, which is in October. I just bought a pipe maybe beginning of March, so perfect timing.
Wait, hold up. This is when you started smoking tobacco?
Yeah, dude.
I was a late bloomer. Born smoking tobacco. For some reason, I pictured in the womb. I was
born with a cigar in my mouth.
Yeah, it's kind of what I pictured. That's weird.
A pipe interesting in between my teeth. No, I wanted to smoke for a very long time, and we went on a mission trip to Belize in 2017, and we went through the duty-free section of the airport, and I was like, bro, look at all these 6 cigars. And one of the guys there was a combat medic in the Army. He was retired, and he was like the adult to make sure the young adults weren't idiots. I was like, Gary, you smoke cigars, right? He's like, yeah. I said, let's do that. And then it took us 2 years to actually make it happen. But I got locked into that, dude. So all of a sudden, I have very simple classes to do online because back then it was the first semester they ever did it. And they were like, I don't know what to do. So I had unlimited free time. Everybody was getting paid like $700 from the government just to live and exist because they took away everyone's jobs. And all I had to spend it on was my rent at the time was maybe $500 or something like that. I was living with a bunch of friends. So it was just groceries, rent, and then whatever else I wanted to spend money on. And I was like, all right, well, I'm spending all my money on cigars, obviously. I'm not buying any other.
What else would anybody do?
I was like, but what am I going to do while I'm smoking cigars? And that semester, one of my teachers was like, the Harford County Public Library system is fantastic. And I was like, library, shut up, nerd.
Ooh, this guy.
Get out of here with libraries. And then, dude, sure enough, it was the coolest thing ever. I'd never heard of it, but I look and I found Hoopla. And I love to read. I've always loved to read, but thinking of getting a library card is like, no, I'm not going to go to the library. I'm not going to go to the library, buy a book, read it, forget where I put it, not read it in enough time, and then get charged fees for the rest of my life. Are you out of your damn mind? No way. But dude, then I found out that Hoopla just had unlimited free stories, free books. And first thing I saw was one of my favorite collections is I think it's the High Adventure or the Adventure Stories collection by Otto Penzler. It's that fat book. I think it's back there somewhere. Massive. They had it on there as an audiobook for for free. You could rent it for 3 weeks or borrow it for 3 weeks, and it was 65 hours, dude. I was like, all right, well, I know what I'm going to be doing just walking around the house. All my roommates are going to have to listen to High Adventure Stories. I'm sorry. It's just what's going to happen. And I'm diving through all these things, and my mind is just melting over as I'm going through this. And it's like, dude, this is so stinking sick. I just have the whole world at the tips of my fingers. And I stumbled upon this story called The Second Longest Night by Stephen Marlowe. And I read it, and I was absolutely blown away. The twist at the end, never saw it coming. The character, he was so sick, so engaging, and he was what I really liked from those crime stories, which Otto Penzler also put together with the hard-boiled guy, but it was all of a sudden he was traveling the world. And I think that that was really what I was like, okay, this is cool. Because I've always loved noir, I've always loved hard-boiled, but the thing that always bothered me is it's like, okay, well, every story has to be essentially the same because they never leave Los Angeles. They never leave Chicago, New York City, San Francisco, wherever it is. It's always like, okay, well, they just got to do stuff inside the city. So that doesn't open you up to as much international intrigue. Enter Chester Drum, dude. Chet is the man. He was in the FBI for a year, and then he was like, I don't want anyone telling me what to do. So he became a private detective, and he went off on his own and started doing his own work. And the first one is his wife commits suicide by the Communist Party. Or does she? Who knows? So that's the whole thing.
Suicide via Communist Party. Whoa.
Yeah, so her father is a senator, and he's like, Chet, I know you guys had a rough issue with your marriage, but she's dead, and I don't think that she killed herself. I need you to get to the bottom of it. And next thing you know, dude, this guy is in Venezuela chasing down the Venezuelan communist like ambassador guy who's just absolutely ruthless and has the biggest gun collection of all time, and they're duking it out. Just absolutely nuts story. And I was like,
it would
wow,
make the best movie ever if you think about it.
It would make a really good movie. And I was like, man, this is so good. And then I read the next one, and it's called Mecca for Murder, and he goes in to talk to a lady because her son is going to try and go on the pilgrimage to Mecca, and he is a white guy, and that is illegal. That is highly illegal. She's like, no, he's being a real idiot for this, the ambassador from Mecca, and he's in love with her, but he's actually not, and he's trying to become a Muslim, and that just can't happen. You need to stop him. And so Chet goes to do this. What do you know? The guy makes it out of the country. Now Chet's going to Mecca, dude. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And then the next one, they just keep getting better and better. I think one is called like Murder is My Dish or something like that. And he goes, this guy is writing an expose on a communist dictatorship in South America, and they have to find the book. So it's kind of got the Maltese Falcon flair where everybody's going after the same thing. But this time, dude, it's this massive, burly, way too tall, way too muscular guy who is the communist guy. And he is in the United States trying to find this book, trying to get rid of the author. So Chet's got to go up against him, and it's crazy. They end up going to, it's called the Piranha Republic. They go there. He has to fly in and then get smuggled across the border, dude. And it's just the sickest thing ever. So it takes your classic kind of noir trope, but it injects this spy, high adventure, Indiana Jones, James Bond energy that is unlike anything that I've ever read before. We've talked about it before. You and I were kind of kicking it back and forth with Double and Trouble, and you're like, yeah, I definitely like Shell better than I like Chet. I was like, you got to trust me. Chet's cool. Shell is super sick, but Chet's better. And it's because as much as I love Shell Scott, those stories sometimes go too goofy. You know what I mean? But in my opinion, the goofiest one is this one, and I think it's also maybe this stands alone as possibly the greatest book ever written, Strip for Murder. You have to read it, and then we can talk about it afterwards to figure out why. It's just because that guy is a master of putting stuff together in a way that you would never think would be possible. But I digress. So these ones, Chet is also a super engaging character, and he's another guy who I think he's if Shell is all the way over here for not a noir character at all, like because he's too happy, and the regular noir guys are over here, Chet's probably like 3/4 of the way to not noir because he is pretty happy, but he also kind of deals with the struggles of all the stuff that he's gone through over his life, the people that he's had to kill, challenges that have had to happen, cases that he hasn't solved the right way and lost people for. So he deals with that, but he also is so quick with the wit, so quick with the funny stuff. There's one thing where he's trying to convince this gangster is hiring him. Sort of. He was working for the government, and then the gangster's like, hey, you wouldn't want to be my bodyguard, would you? And I know you're working for the government. And Chet's like, I'm actually not working for the government anymore. He said, all right, well, here's $500. You work for me now. And Chet's like, cool. You want me to go bomb the the palace, and the guy's like, "No, what are you talking about?" And Chet's just firing off on all cylinders, making jokes, dude. So it's super engaging to have these characters who really love their jobs and enjoy them, but at the same time, dude, they're just the toughest guys around, and they
Right.
take care of business as much as possible. So he's so much fun. And to that point, I was saying with Eye of the Tiger, I remember I'd been going through kind of a rut of listening to stuff that I really didn't enjoy that much, and so I was like, "How's it time to revisit Chester Drum?" And I was like, "I don't want to because I don't want to go through them and have them wear out, you know, and I've read them too often." I was like, "But I got to do it." And so next thing you know, dude, I'm begging to go to work the next day because they were so much fun. I was literally
Right.
like at the I have a half-hour drive home. I listen to them all day as a delivery driver, and that half-hour drive home comes, and I'm like backing into the drive. Like, oh, I better back in a little wrong, so I have to pull forward so I can listen just a little longer because
Yeah, I
they're
gotta
so
get this.
engaging. Yeah, what's gonna happen? So yeah, fantastic stuff, dude.
I mean, it's great that he has such a backlog too. You know what I mean? Imagine if this guy had 3 books, you'd
I
be
know
devastated, bro.
it would
Like
be
this,
crushing.
it's so cool, and this is something we'll talk about with Terrence Leahy when he comes on in a little bit. Like the idea of a series character is very cool, and it's you know two of your picks. You can kind of count Louis L'Amour too, but two of your picks
Yeah,
for sure were like built on series characters. Like they
yeah, dude.
did that. You know what I mean? And it's super interesting how they keep the character interesting that long, and
Right.
what about their writing kind of infuses with the character itself to make something that works every time. Where it's like, dang, this guy's sensibilities with this character that he's created, it just speaks something
Yeah.
into your life, and it provides you with the right vehicle to go through these plots that, to your point, like we could find them in other stories and similar
Right.
things. Um, but yeah, it's almost like the character makes everything that much more worth it and that much
Yeah.
more exciting, which is
Yeah,
awesome.
for sure. For sure.
And you
It's
could tell he's definitely the little bit weightier one between him and Shell. To us
right.
saying that Archer's basically a few steps down from, or a few
Yeah.
steps up from Shell Scott.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, Shell's got weight to him, but he is prime. Like he's just a funny guy, and the stories are harebrained and hilarious. Whereas Chet's a funny guy and even weightier stories. So yeah, to your point, it does infuse. It's got the same sort of thing where you're. One of my favorite sections of a Chester Drum story is he takes this girl out solely with the intention of pumping her to see if she knows anything about this murder. And the next thing you know, you're drawn into this like fantastically well written romance. And it's like I can't even think of a romance book I've ever read in my entire life, you know. But the way that he writes this, you're like you're almost as invested in this as you are in the action. You know, you're
Yeah,
like, dude, this is so engaging. And I think that that's when you can tell that like you're working with a master, where
yeah,
the action is your favorite part of the book for sure, but every other moment you're like, man, this is close second. I can't believe
yeah.
I'm liking this part. This is so good. And he has this book. I haven't read it yet. It's a big old boy. It's called 1956, and I think it is the first kind of dive into what we have is now like the modern thriller genre. The
Wow.
cover is sick, and it's about espionage, I think. So I wonder how much it influenced kind of Tom Clancy. And
Mm,
I'm not a huge fan of the more like military thriller, spy thriller that's a lot more slow burn. Like I've never read Jean Le Carre or any. I've read like one Tom Clancy book, and I've said before I have a really hard time following any number of characters greater than the number one for the most part.
mm,
I almost immediately get lost. Start having issues with who's this, which one is this. But I'm still super engaged because I trust Marlowe so much that like that guy could write anything and I would read it because he's so good at kind of developing the through lines in the story and giving you just what you want in the way you want it that you're fully locked in. So I'll do a report back once I finish that one.
perfect. I'm excited for you to check that out. That could end up being one of your all-time favorites right there if it's done
Yeah, dude, it
well,
could.
executed correctly. That's pretty sick. I'm excited.
Yeah, dude,
Let me
it
know
could
how it
be.
goes.
I will. I'll report back. But now we're to the final number one, dude. Who we got?
The guy we've never talked about. Not once on this podcast, dude. This is a
Not even
brand
on this
new
episode,
take.
right?
Not even once. So we've talked obviously ad nauseum about what makes Louis L'Amour incredible. So before you click away, I've got us a segue into a conversation that is different than just talking about what I like about Louis or what you like
Right.
about Louis.
Dude,
Look at
look at
these
these
covers.
covers.
Like these are incredible, bro. And the best one
Dude, the
maybe ever,
Lando one.
Lando.
Little stud, dude.
But this is the real reason why we choose Louis L'Amour right here. Is the freaking guy behind the books
Yeah, dude.
lived an impeccable, incredible life. And there was a guy on our Discord that said a very thoughtful comment the other day about this concept of like men's authors in this day and age, and I'm going to butcher this guy's quote, so go into the Discord and read it, if you want to get the full sense of it. But he was talking about how today we're only drawing off media and the diluted media that we talked about in our last episode.
Right.
Let alone the guys back then who weren't really just drawing off of contemporaries and entertainment. They were fighting in the war, and they were living real lives with weight and taking that and putting it into the stories. So when you read something like Education of a Wandering Man, you see kind of the creation of Louis L'Amour, of like some of these experiences. I think quickly back to when he was in the mine or like the railway situation where he was kind of the only person watching over that area.
Dude, that was
he
crazy.
was by himself, just reading and writing, isolated. It's like, and then he was obviously a merchant marine, and he was a boxer and a logger. He was all over the map. Cool. He was over in Japan. He's over in, everywhere you could think. That's how you get a story so incredibly rich with detail, like the Louis L'Amour stories.
That's fantastic.
Man, that's what I love about him. That's what a lot of us have lost in this genre that's falling behind, to the point of Frank Bill, like somebody who lives the life. You can feel it in the writing, and that's what I appreciate about your writing. Is I've seen you freaking jump off of the thing that makes me sick to my stomach to look at the height of, and climb and do all the real stuff that you're writing about. There's just something different about that. So I don't know. What do you riff off that? Because I know you have thoughts there.
Well, the first thought is that's also very true for you. Like, you literally are a boxer, so you have that same kind of Louis L'Amour DNA of knowing like the grit and the determination that it takes to get through a fight, get through the tough stuff. So super cool.
I appreciate it.
I think that's something that's kind of an aspirational thing about L'Amour. For sure, him, and there's many others, but it's like, dude,
like Hemingway, the big one, London.
These guys are able to do these studly things. To be a good writer, I gotta get my game up. I gotta start doing it. I gotta take a firearms class, go hunting, go on a long hunting trip, go explore places, find places in my city that nobody's heard of, and learn about them. Get etched into the richness of the world around me. Maybe go jump on a train, dude, illegally, break some laws. Remember, last week we said any masculine thing might end up being against the law. So I think all of that's just to say that, dude, Louis L'Amour is so cool. I talked about stories and how they hit me right where I needed to be, but to get back into some of the stuff that he writes, I mean, you read the Yondering stories, dude. Sometimes you're not even sure if they're even fiction. You're like, this is
right. You're like, is this your life? Is this your journal?
So it's so cool. The fact that you even have that question at all. Like the ultimate. It's This is gonna totally butcher poor Louis getting compared to this, but one of my favorite comedy movies is True Memoirs of an International Assassin, where he writes this story and everybody's
the Kevin James one.
These details are too good. He's got to be the guy who did it. And they go and they try and kill him. It's like, dude, that would be the ultimate dream with me writing a Nate Cole thing. Somebody's like, this seems like he actually did this. Let's go kill this guy.
Right.
And then you got to fight for your life to get out of it. But that's literally Louis L'Amour. There was no joke about it. You're reading these stories, and it's like, there's ones about, one of them I was telling Luke the other day, I just was going through Volume 4 of the Adventure Stories. He's literally on a boat, and he talks. The first half of the book is the short story is how much he hates this captain. Absolutely hates this guy because he was just giving him the hardest time of all time. And he sees him in the street. And he's like, I'm going to go beat that guy up. And the guy's like, man, it's good to see you. Everybody on a ship always just has the craziest experiences, don't they? And the guy's like, yeah. He's like, it was good serving with you. And then they just walk away. And that's the end of the story. I'm like, Louis, did this actually happen to you? Did you hate this guy? And then you saw him, you're like, yeah, we served on the ship. I'm not going to kill you. It's just so cool to have these stories that are laced with so much truth that you're not even certain if it isn't just truth.
Yeah, Hemingway is another prime example of that, where you're like, dude, are you just telling me your life right now? This
Yeah.
is insane. This is crazy.
This is so
You know.
sick, dude.
Um,
Yeah,
I
and
think I'll
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry.
No, mine's
You
gonna
first, bud.
probably take us out. Are you
Okay.
sure? Me?
Yeah,
You?
I, the westerns too. He obviously lived in the
Right.
West, knew the West really well. So it's everything this guy writes is just laced with that. I mean, it's what we talk about all the time. You read a story because it's good, but you stay with a story because of the guy who writes it. It can be like that's how a lot of people are these days. We've said it before. We're
Right.
both authors, readers, you know. So it's so
Absolutely.
cool to see someone that's like, man, this guy's sick. Let me read everything he wrote because he's got the right mindset for it all.
Hey, dude, Louis, that heroic icon, just trying to live up to the
Yes,
man, you
dude.
know, the myth, the legend. What I was gonna say is, we tried to keep Veritas authors out of this conversation, but I also want to. I think a lot of people would be like, "Oh, I'm not going to be able to go to Africa and hunt, do all the stuff that Hemingway which
Right.
for sure you can't." But like, you put out the article the other day on P3 about dressing well to like live up to your characters,
Yeah.
and it made me think of Terrence Mayhew's one of he wrote Mitch Mayhew with us at Veritas. I think he's a prime example of someone who's living out so much of and embodying so much of his characters, where you see him in the gym, you see him dressing nice, he's very classy, he makes the classy drinks. Like, I
Yeah.
buy into him living that lifestyle too. And so I get that same feeling reading his books, where I'm like, yeah, I love that this is the guy writing those books, and it just makes it that much better. So he's another example that it shows, like, in this modern age, with staying, relatively. I mean, he travels, he goes to Paris, like, but staying relatively realistic with your options, you can definitely live more congruently with your characters and live more of the romantic writing lifestyle that has been largely forgotten, I feel like. And now
Yeah,
we're
dude,
just a
for
bunch of
sure.
guys hunched over a computer, typing, yelling at each other online. Just like, that's not what I want to, that's not what you want to do.
Right.
So I appreciate Terrence, I appreciate you, and all the other writers out
Thanks,
there
dude.
who try to make strides toward living out their ideals.
Yeah, and that's what was really cool. There's nobody's taken up the call yet, but we did the kind of little trend where it's, oh, of course you write for Veritas, and it's read adventure fiction written by an adventurer. And I think George Cottonwood did one too, and it was pretty cool. He kind of took the thing and he showed like a whole story of the stuff that he's done and the legacy he's lived that makes sense for him to write fiction that you'd want to read. And I think that's what I mean. All of the Veritas authors, you guys should hop on there. Do it, dude. It would be so cool to
Right.
have the whole internet. But I think if you go to the Veritas account, you can see it in the reposts. Everybody who's done one, and it's cool. It's what you like to see. You want to see characters who, on one hand, can like. That's one of the things I said about Louis was, man, you could have casted him as any one of the characters he's wrote about because he's
Right.
over 6 feet tall, around 200 pounds. He's a boxer, dude. He's the man, you know, and that's what you should strive to be. There's nothing worse than having your character be the coolest thing about you. You got to be cool on your own too. So, for any writers out there, seek out doing cool things. Try to learn new things. Try to become a more interesting person. And like you see with Louis L'Amour, that guy, I love reading his stories because he just feels like my grandfather, you know? Like
Right.
I can imagine when I'm reading a book, I imagine sitting there on the like rocking chairs on his front porch looking at the mountains, just hearing him tell me the story. And that's what's so cool. It's like there's stuff within each of us that is so filled with passion and fantastic stuff. You just got to find a way to get it out there. And Louis, he got a lot of stuff out there. Speaking
He
of,
did.
to close it off, dude, I remember thinking 40 million copies of Shell Scott. That's insane. Louis L'Amour's total sales of copies ever is over 350 million, which is crazy. I can't even.
Wow. So when I said we were about 500 million with these guys combined,
Yeah,
Lou
dude.
was doing the heavy lifting on that.
Yeah,
He was doing
pretty
the
much
heavy
the half a
lifting there.
million himself. Crazy work, dude.
The guy's a man. Well, this was a fun conversation, dude. Hopefully you guys got some inspiration to either read some of these authors, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard us talk about them, but maybe you go pick out another book from them, whichever one kind of spoke to you in this moment. Or if you're a writer, you realize, oh man, I should try a little bit harder to go out and manifest some more of these experiences for myself so that they show up on the page and give a richer experience to the reader. Because that I think ultimately helps, and that we are some author readers. So this was a great conversation for me. I love this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I wanted to touch on, before we hop off, the fellows over at Get Piped. They released a book with us called Tales of Fire and Briar, and both of those dudes are studs. Adam is in the military, so he always posts sick stuff of him in the field, and Nick is really like both of them are super into working out. They're both studly guys. So another thing where you see them and you're like, man, I'd want to read a book you wrote. But they wrote a whole book called Tales of Fire and Briar that talks about pipe smoking, and kind of like pipe smoking plays into every story, but there's poems, there's short stories, there's kind of just like historical fictions. Fantastic. But he just had a YouTube video go live, and he gave Treasure Is My Trade and the whole Veritas team a little shout out. So it was pretty cool. We can link it below. And at the end, he talks about Fire and Briar. So if you're interested in checking that book out, for sure, check it out. We were honored to publish it. Those guys are doing great work over there. And if you're interested in pipe smoking or the pipe hobby at all, check those guys out. Their podcast, the Get Pipe podcast, and the Get Pipe YouTube videos. When I was first kind of like getting really into pipe smoking, those videos were everything you needed. So fantastic. Production quality is incredible. It looks like a whole movie. So that guy's killing the game.
Those guys are cool, and they're very jacked, very inspiring stuff.
Yeah, they have a whole thing called Get Fit, Stay Piped, where it talks about the whole idea, which is true of writers as well. I think about that all the time. With the pipe community, it could be something that is bad for you. It really isn't. Do your own research, but I firmly believe it's. I firmly believe it's.
I say to that.
Yeah. But their whole idea was like, well, the longer you live, the healthier you are, the more you get to smoke pipes. So work out, and it's the same sort of thing here, right? Like we just talked about it, to circle back to being the writer who actually is the Louis L'Amour level stud. The longer you live, the more books you get to read, and the more books you get to write. So. Don't hesitate to work out. So
don't hesitate, dude.
Working
out does suck. Let me tell you, as a guy who works out nearly every day, I don't like it. I can say the same is true for you. People think when they see you, they're like, "Oh, you must love working out." No, hate working out. It's stupid, but you got to do it. You got to bite the bullet, man. You got to make it happen. But yeah, this was fun, guys.
To that point, it's. Even just doing hard things every day is a good thing. Even if it's like, I'd rather work out than just like dig a hole for the sake of doing a hard thing. I'm going to work out. Let's do something actually sick. But yeah, this was a great conversation. You guys should hop on to the Discord, hop into the comments, tell us who your top 3 authors are. You can do Veritas authors if you want. No pressure though. Say whoever it is. Super cool to hear what you guys have to say. We love community engagement, and we also just opened up a section in the Discord where you can jump onto the Discord and you can suggest episode topics for us to talk about. So don't hesitate.
Yeah, guys, we'll see you in there. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Got a doctor's appointment for man. Weak man.
Fifi?
Yikes. Now, I think I already know the issue. Please, what's going on?
Well, I just been not feeling like the man I should be. My wife has to unscrew the pickle jar for me. I can't crack an egg. I can't even do a push-up. Not even with my knees on the ground. Business started deteriorating about 3 days ago. I produced that chest hair. It's not around anymore. I used to be able to do 1 pull-up. Can't do any now. Actually, can't even hold on to the bar. When I sweat, it smells like roses. I don't know what's going on, boss.
Oh, man, I've seen this before, and I know exactly what to do, don't worry. Now, you've got a particularly strong case of weak man syndrome, so I'm gonna have to prescribe you 3. I would never do this typically, you only need 1. Body part of the man. Not a dull grass. And particularly potent. Treasure Is My Trade. Now, these Veritas Entertainment books are all you need. Tell me how you feel. Careful with these.
Damn, Doc. I feel better already.
Read Veritas Entertainment. Become the man you were meant to be.
Read Veritas today.
Veritas Entertainment would like to remind viewers that this program is pure satire. Our books are not FDA approved, AMA endorsed, or recognized by your mom as a legitimate medical treatment. However, it has been said Veritas readers may experience the following totally unverified and possibly imaginary side effects. 30% increase in chest hair density, exact percentage may vary, sudden craving to chop wood shirtless, 2 to 3 more dates per week, plus 200 pounds to your bench press, the uncontrollable urge to unbutton the first several buttons of your shirt, instinctively knowing how to grill anything, including salad, a voice that drops half an octave, the ability to parallel park in one smooth motion while maintaining eye contact with onlookers, a statistically significant improvement in beard thickness even in readers who haven't hit puberty or are women, sudden knowledge of Magnum PI and Tom Civic. Side effects are permanent, hilarious, and not covered by insurance. Read responsibly.